guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily Jean. If you guys are new here, happy Vlogmas Day 20. This is my last and final sit down video that I have for Vlogmas. The next two videos after this, day 21 and day 22, are full, productive, long vlogs going Christmas shopping and wrapping my gifts. So many fun things in those vlogs, so I can't wait for you guys to see those. Stay tuned. Those will be posted right after this one, and obviously I'll also be vlogging for Christmas Eve on the 24th and on Christmas Day the 25th. I will be with my family both of those days, so my family will be my priority, but I will be vlogging and trying my very best to create some sort of fun, festive video and vlog and take you guys with me for that. So I'm hoping everything will really be wrapped up by December 26th, which was the original goal, but with me being behind, it may go a few days after that. With all the housekeeping aside, tonight we are going to do a little bake with me because one, I needed a video idea, and two, I've been trying to just do more cooking videos in general because I love to cook so much and I never normally do videos on it. So I thought we could do a little baking. A month ago or so, I was hanging out with my grandma and her sister, so my aunt, I call her, and she gave me her scone recipe. So I think I'm going to try to make homemade scones. I want to make some sort of yummy icing on top. I think hers are just plain scones, and then we can kind of add what we want to it. So I'm not really sure what it's going to be yet. Obviously you guys probably know before I do based on the thumbnail and title, but yeah, I'm really excited. We're gonna get to the kitchen. I'm just gonna do a voiceover. Bake with me. I don't know if this is gonna be a fail, if they're gonna turn out super well. Also, a huge tip, if you are trying to cook something new or you're just new in the kitchen in general and you want to make something specific, I always go on TikTok and search the hashtag of whatever I want to make. So earlier today I was looking at scone TikTok recipes, and TikTok is honestly just a really easy way to look at a bunch of videos under that recipe or specific meal or dish that you want to make, and you can learn so much super quickly. So I was kind of watching a few of those, gathering some information, getting some inspiration, but I think I'm going to try my best to actually follow the recipe that I have, which you guys know I normally never ever follow recipes, but with baking it's kind of essential. So I will be following the recipe, and I will have it listed in the description box for you guys to check out. Without further ado, if you guys want to learn how to make some scones and bake with me for the evening, then just keep watching. Okay, I'm starting by getting out all of the ingredients for this recipe, and I quickly realized I was out of eggs, so I had to grab a new pack of eggs. You only need one for this recipe, and then I got out all of the other ingredients: all-purpose flour, sugar, baking powder. This is vanilla bean paste. You also will need vanilla extract, salt, heavy cream, an egg, and some cold butter. So we're starting with the hardest part of this, I would say, is cutting up your cold butter into small little bits and pieces. I just cut it into thin slices, kind of stacked it on top of each other, and then tried my best to chop it up to mini little cubes. You want to try to do this pretty quickly as well, because obviously the butter will start kind of melting and getting a little bit warmer. So I chopped it all up, threw it in this tiny little dish that I had. It was actually a little bit satisfying to do this part, so I enjoyed myself. And I popped this back in the fridge while we move on to the next step so it can stay nice and cold. I'm preheating the oven to 400 degrees and getting out my baking sheets. I ended up having to use two, but here I'm just aligning my first baking sheet with parchment paper, which is key. Okay, we're going on to the dry ingredients. I'm using this large mixing bowl and starting with the flour. I'm measuring out 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and make sure you kind of tap it down, pack it into whatever you're measuring with to make sure you get the correct measurement. Pouring it into my mixing bowl, and I'm cleaning as I go because I've learned that the hard way, especially with baking. Okay, we're moving on to some sugar, and surprisingly, scones don't have as much sugar as many other baking items, which I love that about them. So it was 1/3 cup of sugar. Now I'm adding some baking powder and a little bit of salt. Of course, this full recipe will be listed in the description box so you guys can follow it step by step. Here I am whisking my dry ingredients to make sure they are well combined. Now I'm taking the cold butter that we chopped up in the beginning, adding it to our flour mixture, and I would say this is also kind of a tricky part of the recipe. I've never had to make something like this before, but you basically want to mash those little butter pieces into the flour until you kind of have like a crumbly, a pea-sized crumble texture. So I used a fork at first, then I tried to use my potato masher, and then I just used my hands the good old-fashioned way, which I found worked the best. I know you can put it in like a food processor or something like that, but I decided just to do it myself, and it ended up working fine. Okay, we're moving on to the liquid ingredients. So I'm taking a smaller bowl and using our heavy cream. You can use heavy whipping cream or heavy cream, either works. I'm taking my 1 egg, cracking it in. This is the vanilla extract, which I showed you the backside of because that's how crazy my brain is at the end of Vlogmas. I believe I only used 2 half teaspoons of this, added it in, and then we are going to whisk this liquid mixture together very well. Okay, now I am going to slowly pour in the liquid to the dry and mix as I go. So you want to mix this until it is just combined, and then I started to use my hands to kind of knead it together and create that dough, kind of crumbly dough, soft texture. It was a little bit sticky, which you will see we'll use some flour to kind of combat that in a second, but really making sure everything is very well combined. And that's why it is key to have your butter super cold, because you want those bits of butter still throughout the dough and you don't want it to be liquid. Okay, I'm taking a clean surface cutting board, adding some flour down to that, and taking our dough, pressing it into the flour to help it not stick to my hands as much. You want to roll it into a nice big ball and then kind of pat it down into about a 7-inch round shape, kind of like you're making a pizza. I think this is kind of up to you how thick or thin you want it. I think next time I would have made it a little bit thicker so they puff up more and maybe a smaller shape. Then I flipped my dough over just so I could press in both sides of the dough, and I tried to like make my circle a little bit smaller here, as you can see. Patting it down, it definitely does not have to be perfect, so do not worry about that. I'm taking a sharp knife and cutting this into 8 equal pieces. Again, it's kind of like you're making a pizza. It was very easy to cut and it was a nice, soft, fluffy dough texture. So here I think it would be fun to make different shapes or make little mini scones. You can really do anything you want here, but I was just following the traditional recipe. This was kind of an added thing I did. I don't know why, I just feel like I've seen this on TikTok. I'm just adding little cuts into my scones so it kind of creates some sort of design when you take them out of the oven, and I thought it would be pretty with the glaze. Okay, I'm throwing our pieces of scones onto our baking sheet with parchment paper, and here's when I realized I need 2 pans. So I put 4 on each. You want them to have a little bit of room between each other, making sure the shape looks pretty good and kind of fixing up the sides. Then you have to throw them into the freezer. I should have cleaned out my freezer before this, but I honestly didn't realize you had to do that step. You just want them to harden for about 5 to 10 minutes. So in the meantime, we will start on our glaze. I started making this glaze from the top of my head, and then I realized there's actually a glaze recipe with the scone recipe that I have, so I will share that down below. So at first I wasn't really measuring, and then I realized I needed to, but basically you can make any glaze you want with 2 simple ingredients, any type of powdered sugar, and if you don't have powdered sugar, you can grind up regular sugar in a blender. That's how I made mine. So basically homemade powdered sugar. I did about a cup of that with some lemon juice, some vanilla bean paste, and now I'm adding in some warm milk to mix it all together. Basically, I made it kind of a complicated way because I like to wing things, and then I read the recipe and it's actually a lot easier, and you need more powdered sugar than milk than you would realize. You could make this any flavor you want. You could do like a lemon zest or a blueberry, but I did the vanilla bean, which is why I used that vanilla bean paste. Okay, here I took the scones out of the freezer and we are just putting some extra heavy cream right on top, and this is going to give them that kind of golden browned yumminess on the top. So we're going to throw these in the oven now that they have prepped, and you can keep them in the oven from about 18 to 22 minutes. You want to keep your eye on them until they are nice and golden brown on top. Okay, here are our fresh scones straight out of the oven. They cooked absolutely perfect. Like I said, the next time I think I would just make them a little bit smaller and maybe try to make them more puffy or be able to rise a bit more, but I think they turned out so good. And you can even see where I made those little cuts on the top where the little cracks are. I think they look so beautiful. So you want these to fully cool down before you add the glaze on top. So in the meantime, I fixed up my glaze after I realized there was an actual recipe on the recipe card that I had. So I added a whole nother cup of powdered sugar to thicken it, and it also made it a lot more like white and creamy because you want the glaze to be able to harden on top of the scone. So now I took one of the old baking sheets that we used and I topped it with this cookie rack, and I'm pouring the glaze over the scones so it can drip underneath onto the baking sheet just to get a nice even layer of this vanilla bean glaze. This was incredible, and honestly the glaze is where all the flavor is, where all the sweetness is, so you can really get creative with this part. The base of the scone is just very simple, light, and just a little bit sweetened, and the glaze is what makes it really yummy. So I let those sit out overnight. This is Kyle and I the next morning, and I decided to plate them on this little metal tray that I found. So I'm just putting them in a little circle. The glaze is now hardened on top, as you can see, and it dripped all onto that parchment paper, which makes it super easy for cleanup. I started to stack them, and then Kyle wanted to come in and do his creative idea. And there are our homemade vanilla bean scones.
Let's just split one.
That's what we got.
I'll take first bite.
Yeah.
Or do you want to do it together?
You can go.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
It's soft on the inside.
It's a lot different. That's really good. I thought it was going to be hard. That's nice.
No, that's what a scone is. It's like a hard outside.
Wow.
And see how it's not super sweet? Like the base is very plain.
Let me get a... Let me get one to go. Jeez, baby.